Hey everybody, in this episode, as I like to call it, we're going to talk about molds and how I use clay and Bondo, because I've gotten a ton of emails on this, so I hope you enjoy this. Okay, we're back. So, what I want to talk about is I've had a ton of emails asking me how I make these carbon fiber propellers, and it did take a lot of time and a lot of research, an awful lot of kind of trial and error, some prototyping, to get to the point that I was able to build, props like this and this. I started like this. So what I want to do is, I've had a lot of emails about how I get started in this. So I take a piece of clay like this, okay? Now I've got another camera here, so I'm going to try to play to this camera. Hopefully you're seeing that camera up here or up there. I don't know where I'm going to put it. But let's say I'm wanting to make a fiberglass propeller of this prop, okay? A lot of people got confused thinking that I was pressing this into the clay and then pulling this out, and then that was the mold. That's not correct, okay? So what I do is I press the propeller into the clay, and I want to work the clay up against the leading edge of the propeller, okay? And I'm talking about the exact leading edge, and I just lost my pen. So what I mean by is, if you look at and I'm going to try to draw upside down here. So let's say we have the airfoil of the propeller, okay? We want the mold to be at these 2 points so the two parts can pull apart, okay? So I'm going to work this clay up around the propeller, and I'm not going to do all of it right now because I don't want this video to be too long. But essentially I'm going to work this up like this. And once I get it exactly how I want, now here where the hub is, you're going to want to go right for the middle, okay? Because you want this to be a section cut right through the propeller. So at the hub, if this is the hub and this is the propeller coming out a little bit like this, you're going to try to go straight through that hub, okay? So you will end up with something like this. What I do now is take some balsa wood and build basically sides to it, and then I'm going to put 3 or 4 coats. Well, I'll put 3 or 4 coats of mold release on this, okay, like a PVA mold release. And then with those dams around it, I can take Bondo, I mix it up, and I take a foam rubber brush, and I'll put on a real thin coat, and I'll let that completely cure. The reason I put on a thin coat is, if there's any bubbles I've trapped in there, you'll see it come up through the Bondo, or start to come up through the Bondo. So as you put the Bondo on, now if this is a really big propeller, you can bring the Bondo out to here and stop and let that cure, then continue on out. And you might end up with a little bitty air holes in there, but it shouldn't be a big problem. But basically, what you then do is, once you pull this out, you'll have a Bondo mold. So imagine, if you can, this is the clay that I worked up around this propeller, okay? I put the dam around it, I pour the Bondo on it, Bondo cures, and then when I pull, and let's say this is the cured part of the Bondo, when I pop it off, okay, the Bondo will have the propeller stuck in it like this, okay? So with this still stuck in here, you don't want to pop this out, because if you let any air behind this, when you put your Bondo on now, it will get behind there and your mold won't work. So now I've got this with all the clay pulled off it. I'll peel off all the mold release and get this completely cleaned up, and I'll actually put a coat of wax on it, spray on some mold release, put my dams around it, put on a little bit more mold release, spray on the PVA, and then I will brush in a real thin coat of Bondo, and then I'll just start building up the layers of Bondo. Now if you look at this, I don't know if you can see any of my layers. Well, you can see a couple of air bubbles there where I had a layer. But basically, as you put the Bondo in and start building it up, one thing you want to be careful of, if you get a big block of Bondo, it can get really hot, okay, when it cures. I mean, almost, it won't burn your hands, but it'll get real hot. But what it's doing is, if you've finished a propeller and painted it up and waxed it all up, the Bondo curing can get hot enough to actually make your paint get loose. And if you try to take this apart before it's completely cooled down, you can pull the paint off your part when you pull the clay off. So if you can imagine, think just for a minute that this right here is the clay. Okay, I've got the dams. I've poured in my Bondo. So now my clay side's up. Okay, so with the clay side up, when I go to pull this clay off, it can pull with it all the paint and ruin this. Okay, and this is the part you want to pour onto next to make sure you got a good finish. Okay, now some people have asked, do I want to lay the propeller perfectly in their level like this and build the clay up to it, or do I want to try to lay the propeller flat like this? And I kind of like to try to lay the propeller flat. One of the problems is if you lay it flat like this and you've got all this buildup, when you pop off on the other side, when you go to put your parts in, all the resin wants to run out. So if you look at this right here, you can see when I put resin in there, the resin's not wanting to move around. Right here it's going to move a little bit. Right here it will pull a little bit, but that's okay, that's the hub. But if this was tilted like that, when you put your resin in, it would all want to move. Okay, so you don't want that to happen. So for me personally, I like to try to make the propeller flat in the mold as I can get it. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Keep the emails coming. This one I've probably had 15 to 20, no, I've probably had 50 emails on this one, actually, the more I'm thinking about it. But when you go, there is sometimes that you end up with where you can't have the, it just hit me, sorry guys, my train of thought being ADHD jumps all over the place. It's like, hey look, a squirrel. So doing a prop like this, it's easy to do flat. You do run into more problems when you build a mold like this, because when you pull this out, you do have some high angles where the resin will want to move. Okay, I've experimented with making sure my resin's as thick as I can get. I might even take a little bit of that filler material that West Systems makes, that white stuff, I can't remember what it's called, and I might put that in there to thicken it up a little bit more. But keep in mind, as soon as you lay the carbon fiber in there, it kind of helps the resin from moving a little bit. But the flatter you can keep this, the better. But if you're making an entire prop like this, you don't have much choice except to end up with it being at a higher pitch. Okay, so I know these aren't the most professional videos. I'm just trying to share how I've learned this and all the challenges I've had and all the successes I've had. So thanks for watching my videos. I hope you enjoy these. Keep the emails coming. I don't like to chat on social media, so please don't. I don't mind PM saying, hey Damon, can you send me an email on this, and this, but don't chat and say, hey, how was your day, and expect I'm going to be answering back. I just don't do social media, okay? Thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this.